Welcome to Nightlight. Step away from the mainstream and gather around as we enlighten the world and our realities and travel this cosmic journey we call life. Join us as we share with you and provide that beacon that can guide us all to a better way. Explore with us as we examine a metaphysical montage of spiritual insights covering everything from the mundane to the magical, UFOs to unicorns, and everything in between. This is a time of awakening, of sharing and evolving, of spreading our wings and soaring on the cosmic breath of creation. Come and join with other light-minded spirits as we weave our lights together to seek understanding, enlightenment, and with a little luck, some wisdom. This is Nightlight, a reminder that you are never alone.
Welcome, everybody. Glad you could join me today. I have a book that we're going to be talking about and the author. And the book is The Yielding Warrior, Discovering the Secret Path to Unleashing Your True Potential. When I saw the book first and read up on the author, I thought this is going to be very interesting. And it was more than that. This book is inspiring. And I think that anyone who is on a spiritual journey could benefit greatly from reading this book. It offers a unique perspective on the intersection of meditative arts principles and life's everyday challenges, incorporating the core principle of yielding into actionable advice. Jeff is an expert in the meditative arts, and he offers readers a priceless and life-enriching resource. It's more than that. It's got a very subtle cover. It's not one that you would, reach for because it sparkles and everything. However, it's the kind of book that anybody on a spiritual journey could be drawn to and be inspired by amazingly. Jeff Patterson is a highly experienced martial artist with over 36 years of practice under his belt. He is renowned for his exceptional skills, and I apologize ahead of time. I am going to mispronounce some of these. In Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, Eskrima, Tai Chi, Qigong, Muay Thai, and Kenpo. I got probably one of those right. Having achieved black belt equivalency in all of these martial arts disciplines, he's a firm believer in the benefits of meditative arts and their power to enhance overall life experiences, and has extensively studied the historical, philosophical, and health aspects of meditative arts and recognized the importance of the yielding concept to attain expertise in each discipline. Through his dedication and teachings, he's witnessed positive and profound changes in his students, which fuels his ongoing passion for sharing his knowledge. Anyone who is seeking to find that channel, that link, that portal to higher consciousness, to connect to the spirit within, can benefit greatly from this book. It is an amazing textbook on finding yourself. And I do welcome you to the show, Jeff.
Hey, thank you for having me.
Oh, this book was so inspiring to me. You talk about yielding, and in many ways, that is a technique that addresses all aspects of life. And I think that the way you put it enhances people's ability to function within society in a magical way. And yielding is not surrendering, it's yielding and allowing the other person to come in and then to establish a connection on another level, which is beautiful. And I know that you apply it to martial arts, but it applies to every aspect of life. So you're profoundly experienced in martial arts, but being technically a professional isn't enough. It takes other levels of consciousness in order to be able to apply the physicality into um, a dance, so to speak, in which you are able to read the other person and to understand how to give and take with that person. And in doing so, you understand how you can best get your points across. So, how long did it take for this aspect to come out with you?
The philosophical side of the meditative arts has always been an interest of mine, and it started from I had a boxing coach a long time ago who was very into the philosophical side of the training. He also taught the meditative arts, and he couldn't teach a jab or a footwork practice or anything he did without a philosophical meaning behind it. And at the time, being a young guy, I don't know, 18, 19 years old, working out with him, I didn't always understand where the philosophy was taking us. However, I was always a bit intrigued by it. And something about his teaching style always resonated with me. And it became part of who I am. And that's why I've always been so drawn to that element of the practice. Within the meditative arts, there's kind of the five different paths that people follow. There's more the performance side where you have athletes and performers that study the practice to help be more in tune and more aware of what's going on so they can perform at a higher level. I'm sure if you're an athlete, you've heard the term flow state. This is kind
Yes.
of using the meditative principles to help us reach that level of performance. Then there's the therapeutic path, which is good for our longevity and stability and just being healthy. There's the medical side of the practice, which all of Chinese medicine is based off of Qigong theory. Then there's the philosophical side, which is kind of, one of my passions. And the reason why I like the philosophical side is that it really opens up your peripheral vision. So you start to see things from multiple angles, which has always been interesting to me. And then lastly, there's the spiritual side, which is good for teaching you how to elevate the energy in the spirit in the body, but at the same time, stay rooted and focused. And when you understand these five different paths, they're very powerful in that you're not just kind of building your practice around a blanket approach to meditation. You have a focus and you incorporate different practices that can help us be more targeted on our desired outcomes.
Yeah, when reading through the book, you sprinkled the book full of stories of master teachers having the student wanting to learn their techniques and sending them away for 2 years or 3 years or whatever to do mundane experiences. And it was the archer, the story of the.
Yeah.
You want to share that story because that was a beautiful story.
So it's basically the story of this guy who wants to learn from this master, and the master puts him on these different paths to go do these uh, rituals, like watching a candle burn and watching his wife spin the silk, and he does this for years at a time, each one of these, and every time he comes back he tells them what he learns, and he realizes that when he's done with these three lessons, the master says, well, I've taught you everything I know. And he gets a little bit frustrated, and then he comes to the realization that everything that he needs to know about being a masterful archer was in those three lessons, but in the beginning he just wasn't looking deep enough. And by investing that time and really looking at the the subtle lessons behind what he was having him do, it changed his whole life. And so it was a pretty interesting story.
I was so impressed by your stories, by the lessons that some of these students, had to learn. That it brought, I keep looking at, how can I enhance what it is that I'm doing, and I realized that in some ways I have practiced the yielding without realizing what I was doing, and in other cases there were places where I could have, and it would have enhanced what I learned from a situation. And so reading, I actually went back and reread some of the book because I hadn't caught the subtleties. And most probably I haven't caught all of them yet. It's a gift that keeps on giving, and understanding that power is not all there is. There is wisdom as well. And sometimes people are so focused on the power, they don't gather the wisdom immediately. And certainly in my field, I deal with lots and lots of people, and it's important to be able to realize where the flow of the other person is, and in some ways touch into it so I know what is the best way to approach them. And your book was just so phenomenal as far as, the importance of meditating is. I tell everybody they should have a form of meditation, but how I want to give everybody that I come in contact with this book to say, this is why. This is what meditation can do for you. This is how it can enhance you to be a better person, to be a better father, a better brother, a better husband or wife or whatever, because it gives you a better understanding of where you're coming from and where other people are coming from. And certainly the breathing exercises, and all of the different ways you are giving people in order to meditate is just so impressive. Um, I keep saying to people, this will give you a better spiritual understanding of life. And sometimes they come back to me and say, well, I couldn't meditate. And then it's like, well, let's find another way you can meditate, because there are as many grains of sand there are on the beach. There are that many ways to meditate. And it's important to bring that point across. Can you kind of give some indication as to, I know that I meditate in lots of different ways. And the more I meditate, the more I learn about myself, but the more I learn about spirit as well. And it's open. Meditation opens that channel, and I say it's a portal you go through when you finally get into the flow of it. And you use the term flow, and I think that's very appropriate, because energetically we are all in a flow of that is reflective of our consciousness. So what would you say to someone who wasn't going to go into the martial arts? How would you convince them that the meditation is so important to them?
Through teaching for so many years, I've been running my academy now for 30 years. One of the biggest challenges that I have is getting people to understand the value of the meditative arts so they integrate it into their life and really reap all the benefits that it has to offer. And so I've come up with three things that I like people to spend a little bit of time considering. And I feel like if they put some heartfelt thought into these three considerations, that they're a lot more likely to be successful in their practice. And the first one is thinking about, what is it that's drawing them to the practice? Why do they want to do the meditative arts to stay healthy into their later years, to watch their grandkids grow up? Or Are they dealing with a stress disorder and they want to feel more comfortable when they go out in public? Or maybe they're an athlete and they want to learn how to improve their performance. And once you have this good understanding of what's drawing you to the practice, then I like them to take it a step further and think about maybe 10 or 20 things that will positively change in their life if they accomplish this goal within their meditation practice. And how is it going to affect them personally in their relationships and their work and every area of their life, and really put some time into this. And then I like them to flip the coin. And if they don't accomplish this goal, think about 10 or 20 negative things that are going to happen by not reaching this level of awareness and cultivation. Because if you do this, it helps give you the fuel to get through those times where you don't feel like practicing. And instead of it being a chore that you have to do today, now you have this purpose. So you start looking at it like something you get to do, and you get excited about doing the practice. And when you can make that mental shift, you're a lifelong practitioner, and you'll see so many benefits from the program or from the practice that you'll never want to stop. The second consideration is the idea of consistency. And this is so important. And there's this ancient Chinese story that I really enjoy that addresses this idea very well. And it's about this stonecutter who is very well known all over China. And he was so well known that when people would see his sculptures, whether it's an animal or a landscape or whatever he created, they just knew it was his before they ever even could see the name on the sculpture. It was just that detailed and that special every time they would see his work. Well, because of him being so well known, people from all over the country used to go and live with him for a few years at a time, and they'd learn the trade because they wanted to pick up all of his secrets. Well, every morning, this stonecutter used to begin his day by walking down to the river and meditating. And one day after his meditation session, he's walking along the river and he has this profound vision of this big 6 foot tall, mystical Chinese dragon made out of jade. And he was so taken by this vision that he just knew that this had to be his next project. So he spends the next few months traveling all around China looking for the perfect piece of jade for his new creation. Finally, when he found the stone, he brought it back to his place. And for the next period of time, day in and out, he would just sit with the stone and visualize how this dragon would appear and feel the energy coming off the stone. Finally, one day he began working on the stone, and he carefully placed his chisel on the backside of the rock and started tapping away with his hammer. Hundreds, if not thousands of times, he's tapping on his chisel. Nothing seemed to happen. Day in and out, a few days went by, no change. A few more days went by, and some of his apprentices started second guessing him, thinking, maybe he should try something else. No, there's nothing happening here. And a few more days went by, and finally he tapped the stone, and this big 3 foot section of the stone broke off, and it created this smooth, slightly curved line that was going to be part of the dragon's back. And one of his apprentices who was watching said, "How did you know that that strike was going to break the stone?" And the stonecutter said, "It wasn't that strike that broke the stone. It was the thousands of strikes before it that broke the stone." And with a bit of a discouraged tone, the apprentice said, "But I've been watching you, and there was no change, not even a crack in the stone. Why didn't you try something else?" And the stonecutter got down on one knee, and he felt the smooth line that he just created. And he said, each strike was not wasted. The stone was changing beneath the surface. And even though we couldn't see the change with our naked eye, not only was the stone changing through this consistency and effort, so was the one who wields the hammer. And the reason why I resonate with this story so well is that this is the meditative arts. You know, we don't always see these changes happening day to day through our sitting practices or our movement practices or studying these philosophical concepts, but we're laying the foundation to give us these fruits for the rest of our life. And when we approach the practice with this understanding, we have a lot more reason to kind of stay consistent and keep that effort going. And then the third and final consideration is you need to understand that this is an extremely deep practice, and there's lots of different ways that you could go. And in fact, you could probably go on YouTube and find a million different videos of this practice and that practice. And if you think that you're going to be self-taught in this practice and get anywhere deeper than the surface, you're going to waste a lot of time. And so you need to find a guide, somebody in your corner that can help point you down the right path and show you what practices to cultivate at different levels of awareness. And if you do this and you think about what is your reasoning behind coming to the practice and find a good, strong why, understand the importance of consistency, and really do this regularly and make it part of your lifestyle, and then find a guide, somebody that can help kind of mold you and guide you down the right path, your chances of being successful with this practice and really experiencing the many benefits that come with it are very high.
Absolutely. Finding the right teacher is so important. I know that that in many cases I've looked for teachers, and it's sometimes it's just a sense of, does this feel right to me? Is this appropriate? Do I feel the, and I'm very into energy, and if the energy feels appropriate, then I go forward in the gosh, I at one time was trying to do Tai Chi, and I have vertigo. So Tai Chi was kind of tough. I kept falling over. And the teacher finally said, this just isn't your method. Let's look for a different method. But it was, I was trying something that was not appropriate for me, obviously. But and then I worked, and I did find a teacher that was able to work with me so that I could do it quietly, and I could do it in a ways that I could relax into, and relaxing into it is so important. That it's if you're sitting and you're thinking, you're meditating, then you're not, because you're thinking. And to me, prayer is speaking and meditation is listening. And so it's a matter of quieting yourself so that you can hear your spirit talk to you. And in many ways, for me at least, that's what happens. I feel inspiration. I feel insight. I feel enlightenment. I feel all sorts of wonderful things. But getting there was a long journey. And I tell people, it's like anything else. You have to practice it. You have to be, as you said, consistent. And I know that meditation is something that is key to a spiritual awakening. And many people try to get there through going to classes and getting certificates and saying, well, now I'm a certified this. And I met somebody once who said she had just become a shaman. And I said, really? And she said, yeah, I spent 3 whole days. And I said, and you became a shaman? And she said, yeah, I have the certificate to prove it. And I said, I wouldn't mention that to any shaman ever. I just don't go there. And she said, why not? I said, because shamans don't even say they're shamans. You recognize them by their work and by their energy, not by what they have hanging on the wall. And it's an amazing field out there these days. 50 years ago when I started in on this field, it was something you hid in the closet. And now there's freedom to find all sorts of wonderful things out there. But it's a matter of finding what's appropriate for you. But the spiritual pursuit and connecting to the spirit you carry within is, to me, so important because it's connecting to a universal, a cosmic, if you will, energy. And if you aren't energized, if you don't feel that connection, then you haven't gone far enough. And there's always further you can go. That's what I love about it. You are never, as far as I'm concerned, I'm never an expert or a master or anything. I'm constantly a student, because to declare yourself a master means you know it all, and I just don't think I'll never be there. Let me put it that way. I will always be a student. So how would you say that meditation would enhance somebody's spiritual journey?
In many ways, there's and I have a lot of respect for that, and I totally agree with you in that I don't feel like it's possible. Everybody, like, a lot of times people will come in and uh they'll see the Tai Chi form, and they'll think that, well, what does it take to master this? And I don't know. I've never met anybody that has mastered it, because within a Tai Chi form, you have all 13 energies of Tai Chi. And out of those 13 energies come every single possible movement the human body could make. And so if you were to truly master that, you could master anything the body could do. And so I feel like that level of mastery is always something that we're striving for, but something that's part of the process. I've been studying the meditative arts for 36 years and teaching them for 30 years. I'm still a student learning all the time. I'm nowhere near the master. And I think having an art that's so deep like that is very inspirational, and it makes it to where it's keeps it fresh and interesting even after all of this time. And it hasn't been a hobby that I do once in a while. This has been my lifestyle and something that I teach and I'm around, every single day of my life. And so being that immersed in it, I'm still nowhere near the master. And so very much resonate with that. Back to your question, I think it's closely related, and hopefully this will be helpful to your listeners, is understanding the 5 regulations of any meditation journey. And in these 5 regulations, they are core underlying principles of any practice, whether you're doing a sitting meditation, a movement practice like Tai Chi or Qigong or yoga, or standing meditation. And they are regulating the body, regulating the breath, regulating the mind, regulating the energy, and regulating the spirit. And briefly, I'll kind of talk on what I mean by these 5 areas. The first one is regulating the body. And the basic idea of this is our skeletal alignment and our muscular tension in the body and our awareness of these changes in our body. And an example would be, think about a time maybe when you're sitting down at your computer and you've been there 3 or 4 hours. Maybe your shoulders are rounded forward and your body's feeling a little lethargic. Maybe your neck's getting stiff. And then another time when the most important person in your world walks in the room and your body perks up and you feel like you're on top of the world. Well, these 2 different energetic states we're in control of all day, every day. But how often are we aware of them? And so through meditation, we start to learn and recognize these imbalances, and we're able to make adjustments. On a little bit of a deeper level of body regulation would be maintaining some level of muscular development in the body, some flexibility, eating a healthy diet to put good nutrients in our body to keep our energy levels up, and maintaining a certain level of a sleep pattern. All of these are part of that body regulation. Then we have regulating the breath. And the breath is a very deep topic. And in fact, Qigong is often referred to as the science of the breath because there's literally hundreds of different breathing strategies. And we use these different breathing strategies to get different physical, mental, and emotional outcomes throughout the day. And so because there's so many different strategies, we broadly categorize them into yin methods and yang methods. Yin methods are often deeper, more holistic style of meditations. Um, an example of a yin breath would be if you ever listen to somebody sleep, their natural breathing pattern is a longer inhale and a shorter exhale. And this is the body's natural way of bringing our conscious mind into our subconscious mind, which is where we are when we're sleeping and dreaming. And so, if we want to resonate with this inward style of energetic expression in our meditative practice, we can do longer inhales, soft retentions at the end of the inhale, and shorter exhales to help bring that energy inward, which is great for stress reduction, dealing with anxiety, with panic attacks. It's good for boosting our creativity. There's lots of reasons why we would focus on this side of the breath. Then we have the yang side of the breath, which is much more aggressive. It's kind of like if you ever had to push your car, you pick up something heavy, your natural instinct is to exhale and put tension in the breath, maybe even make the breath audible. And this helps generate energy and expand the energy in the body. And so when we learn how to regulate the energy, we can control our physical, mental, and emotional well being with the breath. We all go through the day with emotional ups and downs. Some people may be like a roller coaster, others may be a little more balanced. But when you start recognizing these imbalances and maybe you start to get excited, we can use the yin side of the breath to help bring us back down. And when we start feeling depleted, we can use the yang side to pick us up. And so the breath is a very important part of the practice and one of the tools that we use. Then we have regulating the mind. Regulating the mind is a lifelong journey. And in fact, I've heard people so many times say, I tried meditation, but I just couldn't quiet my mind. And so I moved on to something else. And somewhere along the way, people got this misguided idea that in order to be successful in meditation, that we have to reach this state of nirvana where nothing bothers you. And, you know, I've been studying the meditative arts, as I mentioned, for 36 years, and I've traveled around the world many times and trained with some amazing meditation practitioners. And I have never once met anybody who doesn't get distracted. We all do. It's just the way of being human. And so when you understand this, your perspective on the practice can change. And so now when we get distracted in our meditation, we recognize the imbalance and we bring ourselves back to center. And if we do this 50 times during a session, we just got 50 repetitions of being out of balance and coming back to center. And if you do this every day, every month, every year, you start to develop this power and this ability almost to become unshakable, if you will, to where somebody could say something, you could have a stressful day, and you just come back to that center point and you find that balance, you find that breath, you find that awareness, and you're able to stay calm in the muddy water. And so this idea is very important. A story I really enjoy about these two old monks walking down this dirt road after a huge rainstorm, and they come up to this mud puddle. And on the other side of the puddle is this beautiful little girl, and she's standing there in a white dress, but she's crying. And the older monk, he hollers across the puddle and says, "Is everything okay? Can we help you?" And she looks across the puddle and says, "I need to be somewhere, but if I walk across this puddle, I'm going to get my dress all dirty." So the older monk, he rolls up his pant legs and he walks across the puddle and picks her up, puts her on his back, takes her to the other side and sets her down, and she's off on her way. Well, him and the younger monk are walking a couple miles down the road. Finally, the younger monk is just furious and he says, we're not supposed to touch girls, but you did back there at the puddle." And the older monk says, "You're still thinking about that girl? I left her back there at the puddle."
Yeah.
And how many times in life do we need to get 2 miles down the muddy road before we realize we gotta let that thing go? And so understanding this is an important part of the practice will really help our cultivation with the arts as well. And then the fourth pillar or regulation is regulating the energy. And this is an extremely deep topic and something that we could literally talk for hours about. But the basic idea of regulating the energy is once we've reached a competent level in regulating the body, the breath, and the mind, we now have the tools to circulate the energy in the body, to lead it inward, to extend it outward, and to get different expressions of this energy within our practice. And then the fifth and final regulation is regulating the spirit. And often in Qigong, you'll hear the line of raising the shin and sinking the chi. And this is the idea about how do we elevate that spirit and that excitement, if you will, but without getting tense. You know, a lot of times people get excited, their body tenses up, but we want to elevate that spirit and that excitement while staying rooted and relaxed. And this is one of the keys to that higher spiritual development. And so when you understand these five regulations or these underlying principles of any meditative practice, no matter what it is that you do, you can see that it can affect anything you do in life and can really help build awareness and give you the ability to be more in tune in pretty much anything you do.
Yeah, I think that's one of the main things about meditation that that I love is that there's a calmness, there's a peacefulness that does come with it. And even though somebody once said to me, you know, you have so much chaos going on around you from time to time, and that's true. But if you don't let it touch you, if you are peaceful inside, everything else just sort of flows around you. It doesn't enter into you. And it's easier to deal with things for me anyhow, that to step back and be peaceful and take a look at things and see that there are ways of solving problems that sometimes anxiety, you know, covers over and you can't touch, so that once you're observing from a peaceful distance, it's easier to bring peace into other areas of your life. One of the other things that you talked about, which I thought was the silent smile. I thought that was magical.
Yes, the inner smile is
Yeah.
a very important practice. And I always teach people this. And this is something that you can all do, whether you do a meditation practice or not. When you're sitting alone or you're walking down the street, if you just think about having a light, soft smile with the back of your throat, and you just feel that energy of that, where that smile originates. And when that lets go and you find that softness, let that smile and that awareness carry down through the body, through your organs, and really notice how you'll feel more rooted. Whether you're sitting or you're standing, you're letting go of that tension and you're sinking, and you're
Yeah.
just kind of in this peaceful, grateful state. You know, oftentimes I'll tell people to think about a moment that made them smile, or think about a moment that they feel good about, and that feeling and that depth and that ability to have that peaceful, grateful moment can affect, you know, everything we do. And if you approach life from that place rather than the place of chaos and being distracted and frustrated, that's a pretty great thing to have in your life.
Oh yeah. I have a friend who's a lawyer, and I had lunch with him once, and he has an iWatch, and I do too. And I have on my iWatch, I have the app that's Snoopy, and every time I look at the time, there's Snoopy doing something stupid, and it brings a smile to my face. And he said to me, you know, you're kind of old beyond Snoopy. You know, why do you have that on your watch? And I said, every time I check the time, I smile. There is always joy that flashes through me because I am seeing something that just gives me a warm feeling. And he said, well, that's pretty silly. And I said, no, it's not really, because sometimes we get so serious in life. we forget to smile. And once you're smiling physically, if it's genuine, it goes throughout your whole body. And several weeks later, I had lunch with him again. He had Snoopy on his watch.
Nice.
There was a wonderful story about a doll maker that was just profound, that dealt with a smile. You want to share that one?
Yeah, so it was about this very well-known doll maker who created these dolls that everybody wanted, and he couldn't make enough of them. And all over, people tried to mimic what he was doing, and they tried to recreate it. And you would look at them, and they would be almost the same, but one would just stick to you, and one would be something that you wanted more than the other. Nobody understood why. So he had an apprentice, and she studied with him and learned all the intricacies of what he did and how he made the dolls, and thought she learned everything, but still people didn't want her dolls as much as his. And he was on his deathbed, and he told her, he's like, "I've got one more lesson for you." And she didn't, at the time, she was thinking that she had everything, but she didn't understand what she was missing. And she looked at her doll, and he said, "Just raise the side a little bit. Make it look like there's just a slight smile in the doll." And it changed everything. And now people saw this, and it made them feel that gratefulness, that ability to be more settled and thankful in the moment, just by changing a little bit of the lip movement on the out, kind of on the outer corners of the lips, to um, show their appreciation, and that changed everything.
Well, it's that to me, I love that story. I tell people all the time that starting with a smile is international. It speaks every language,
Yes.
except maybe with a wild animal. And if you're showing your teeth, then you're in big trouble. But with people, the smile, it absolutely disarms people. And I tell people that, well, one of my favorite things to do in the grocery store is to look for someone who is alone and shopping. And as I walk past them, tell them how great the color looks on them, how pretty they look, how I give them a compliment, a genuine compliment. And as I pass by, I can feel their energy brightening. And it's such a gift. I mean, a smile to someone is an amazing gift. And it's the same thing with meditation. The more you meditate, the more sensitive you are to the people around you. And by being sensitive, you're able to touch their energy in a different way. And it's an unseen thing. It is a flow. There is no doubt about it. But if you want to disarm someone, you give them a genuine smile and you see their flow, and you know that you can in some way do a ray of sunshine into it. And I think that your book is just amazing in how it portrays the art of meditation, because it is an art form. There's no doubt about it. And once you have gotten into it and flow into it and get to the point where you really are connecting to the spirit and the cosmos, it is the most powerful thing in the world, because it opens your eyes to the potential of the human spirit. And it changes you, because no longer are you in a physical reality, trying to make a living and trying to pay your bills and stuff like that. You become a spirit who is traveling through time, and you see the point of the lessons that you're learning to a certain degree. And it's sort of like, I used to think about situations that came into my life that were horrible. And I used to think I didn't do anything to deserve this. Why is this happening to me? And now when I'm confronted by something, I get excited because it's a challenge, because I must have grown enough to be able to get through this. And therefore, I have tools that will let me get beyond whatever the mess is I've gotten myself into. But it means that I'm growing. I'm getting better at life. And it's meditation that gave me that perspective, that understanding that yes, we're learning, and our lessons are sometimes very strange, but they're all there. It's very much like the watching a candle burn, or making baskets, or watching his wife at the loom. It's a matter of observing yourself first. And I think that's one of the stumbling blocks. A lot of people feel that once you get this level of insight, you should go out and tell people how to live their lives. And that's not the case. It's sharing a tool, certainly, but then walking off and letting the person do what is most appropriate for them with that tool. And sometimes it's like people who send energy to other people and say, I'm going to cure them. And I say to them, you can't cure another person. They can cure themselves. But you can send energy, but you can't tell them how to use it. So if you're sending energy to somebody and you don't see them changing or whatever, it isn't that you didn't do your job. You sent the energy, but it was up to that person to utilize the energy most appropriate for them. And I think sometimes people who are in the healing modalities forget that they can gift energy, but they can't tell a person how to use it. But meditation is it's such an amazing tool to use. It's fascinating how it can change your life. And you give people in the book the breathing techniques to, send energy through your body, and how to aim it, and how to understand where it's needed, and to get to know yourself better. And so meditation is really a tool to learn about yourself. And in learning about yourself, you learn about your journey, and you learn about reality. But when you look at through time, meditation has been something that has been there forever. It's not just something that has cropped up in the last few years. It's been around for thousands and thousands of years. Shamans have used it. I don't know how far back it actually goes, but it's been a tool that's always been there. And it would seem to me, if the human spirit was on the earth plane, there was a way to get to that human spirit within yourself. So people, have always discovered ways to do it. But today, meditation is definitely opening people up to how to do better in business, and how to negotiate contracts, and how to do so many things that we do in our normal day-to-day life that people wouldn't consider to put meditation into it. And your book absolutely says, hey, you've got this tool at your beck and call. All you have to do is practice. Now, you have formed a school. Want to share a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I've been running an academy here in Portland, Oregon now for 30 years. I have an online program where we teach the meditative arts through the online program. It also has a teacher training program for studios, martial arts studios, yoga studios who want to learn how to integrate a meditative practice and add that pillar into their program. And it's geared around a few of the books that I've written, and showing them how to build this practice so they can share it with other people. There's you mentioned how the meditative arts is such a great thing and how it affects you in many ways. And I think part of that comes from the ability to be more in tune and aware of the subtle changes that are happening. Because I think a lot of times, we know that it's good to be happy and not be a pain, but if we don't recognize when we're being a pain, we start living that way. And I think with the meditative arts, it helps us see those imbalances. It helps us see when we're starting to go down that muddy road rather than getting 2 miles down the road. We figure it out on our first couple steps. And when we can recognize these changes, it's extremely valuable, and in today's society, with all of the many distractions we have, cell phones and advertisements and this and that and the other, it's so easy to feel like we need to walk through our days wearing a mask. And we've got these barriers up to protect ourselves from these things coming at us, but also to protect ourselves from letting people see who we really are and what we're thinking, and because we don't want to be uh, brought to light in certain ways, maybe, or whatever it is. And I think that sometimes people get so caught up in living this way, and that they'll look at themselves in the mirror and they're still wearing this mask even when they're by themselves. And meditation is one of those things that helps us stay connected to who we really are. And I feel like that's the true goal of life, right? Is to be
Yeah.
able to stay connected to your heart and to really do what you feel is right and not what you think you have to do. And if you live your life that way, you couldn't really ask for anything more.
Oh, absolutely. And there's a sense of being at peace. I think that's one of the things that I've noticed with people these days. So many people are just almost at war with life itself. And it's a journey. And according to my belief system, when I'm done with this life, I'll come back again someplace and pick up where I left off with learning. And so it's not a matter of, I don't know, I have found joy through meditation. I have found peace through meditation. And and certainly I'm not an expert at it, but it does open that portal to me. It does take me to that place where I see I see more of the flow. I can see more of the energy around me. And it's an exciting thing. And it's sort of like through meditation, it has enhanced the beauty of nature and life and everything. So it's a matter of, I can remember at one point standing in my garden and saying, boy, if this is all there is, I am blissful. This is wonderful. And, I wasn't ready to die, but it was kind of like, what more can there possibly be? And since that time, I have found there is more. But it's such a joy to be in that space, in that feeling, in that flow of energy, that it courses through your body. It energizes every damn cell you've got, and it makes you feel so much more alive. So that I truly think that your book is magical, and it has the tools in it that can enable people to begin a journey that could be a lifelong journey, and at the very least will bring them peace and tranquility on some levels, and then to go beyond that, to understand possibly why lessons have come their way. But the art of yielding is stop trying to make something happen and embrace what is coming your way. And that's one of the the biggest tools one of the biggest tools that I learned through meditation. It's not what you think you should be doing. It's not what you think your next step is. It's waiting and embracing what the next step brings you. And from time to time, people have said to me, why aren't you doing this or why aren't you doing that? And it was about it. I always say, I'm waiting for the call. I'm waiting for the universe to tell me it's time. And I get that through meditation. It's whether it's writing a book or painting a mandala or doing a podcast. I let the universe bring to me what is necessary next. And but that's how it's affected me. It affects everybody differently. So anybody who's starting meditation and committing themselves to it will find their own pathway and will find their own journey and their own bridge. But it is definitely something that I think basically should be taught in the school.
For sure.
Are there any schools that actually do teach meditation? And I'm talking about traditional schools, not.
Yeah. So they did a study a while back I know of where they were teaching grade school kids. They'd have like a 5 or 6 minute meditation that they would do every morning, and they tracked it for a while, and they were comparing it towards results prior with the kids and then also to other schools that weren't doing this. And they noticed all of the GPAs going up. They noticed their performance in other things that they were doing. They noticed that their ability to pay attention in class, everything was changing from this simple practice of just meditating for 5 or 6 minutes in the morning when they got to school. And so it really is powerful. You've mentioned yielding a few times, and I haven't really talked yet about how I break yielding down. And when anybody thinks about yielding, it is that form of redirecting, but there's 3 different ways that we use yielding in our everyday life. There's physical yielding, mental yielding, and emotional yielding. Physical yielding is the idea that, I push you, you push me, whoever's the bigger, stronger person with the most leverage eventually is going to push the other person over. But with yielding, instead of us trying to see who the bigger meathead is, when you push me, I get out of the way of that force. And now I can respond with less effort. So I'm not trying to butt heads with you and see if I'm bigger and stronger than you. Now, this is why it's been so effective in martial arts for generations, because you can't always determine how big and strong your opponent's going to be. And you need to learn how to deal with that strength when it comes at you. And so yielding to that force can allow you to get the advantage without having to butt heads. Now, in order to be good at physical yielding, a lot of things have to come into play. You need to be well rooted. The lower part of your body needs to be strong and flexible so you can change your central equilibrium without getting tight. The body has to be relaxed, the breath has to be calm, and the mind has to be present. While it may be a lifetime journey to really master this, it's that ability to increase your awareness from day one by recognizing all of these things. And when you see these things more clearly inside yourself, you also start to see them more clearly in other people. And this is where it starts to become very interesting, because now, say for example, we're having a conversation and now we're moving into what I call mental yielding. If I say something that throws you off your center and I recognize that from the beginning, I can make an adjustment and bring us back to a harmonious place. But if I'm not paying attention to that, and pretty soon I'm so far off track, you want to knock me upside the head, this is no good. So learning how to use yielding in all of our interactions is extremely powerful. One, we're being more considerate, which is something that we could all do more of. And two, it allows us to be strategic so we can guide these conversations to a positive outcome with the least amount of resistance. And this is great in our relationships and business and sales and negotiations. I mean, there's so many ways we can apply this idea of mental yielding. Then the third pillar of yielding is emotional yielding. And this is very much like mental yielding, but it's with our own interpersonal conflicts. So you think about, oftentimes something will happen to us and we'll respond and we'll go down this path. And we might get an hour, a day, a week down that road and realize maybe that wasn't the best choice.
Yeah.
But by having meditation in our life, we're able to step back and be more present, not let our emotions get involved, and oftentimes make a more educated decision that saves us a lot of heartache on the other side. And I've been explaining this idea of yielding now for many, many years. I've been running this academy for 30 years. One of the most common things I'll hear people say is, yielding makes a lot of sense. In fact, I do yielding all the time. Well, I would agree in that I think everybody does some degree of yielding all the time, whether they recognize it or not. However, it's kind of like if you or I were to walk into a crime scene with a detective who's been on the job for 30 years, I guarantee you that person would see more things about the series of events in the timeline than I would even have a clue of. And
Mhm.
understanding the meditative arts and integrating them into your life helps us see things inside of ourselves and inside of other people that I truly believe that if you don't have a practice like this in your life, that you're never going to see these things and you're going to be missing out on a lot of great things that life has to offer.
I agree. Totally. I just noticed our time. Unfortunately, we're done. Do you want to give your website and stuff like that out so people will know where to find you?
Yeah, sure. It's theyieldingwarrior.com. And also right now I'm giving away a free membership to a kind of a limited program, but it's got some really valuable content in it at members.theyieldingwarrior.com/grow hyphen your hyphen studio. I know it's a bit of a mouthful, but if you go there and just enter your email, it will give you two ebooks that I wrote, one on reset meditations and one on the 5 regulations, which I touched a little bit on this talk. And then also some video lessons on how you can integrate some of these reset meditations into your day to regulate your practice. And so it's really got some good content up there. And like I said, all it costs you is an email. And so hopefully you'll take advantage of that and see what's there.
Fantastic. Well, thank you very much. The book is not only interesting, like I said before, but inspiring. And I so hope people will take a chance and pick it up and read it and learn from it because I certainly did. And I do appreciate you so much.
Well, thank you very much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Oh, my pleasure too.